Hello, this is Wild One, and this is my inaugural board game playthrough video. And I decided to start with Legendary Encounters, which is this is the Alien version. I know that there's a Predator version out now, and here is the beautiful mat that comes with the game. This is a deck building game made by Upper Deck. Who used to be famous for baseball cards, football cards, and got into creating card games, mainly deck building games. Legendary Marvel, the Legendary Marvel Universe games, I'm not particularly into those. I don't like the theme. I like Marvel, but I just don't like the theme of those games. Legendary Encounters actually provide you an opportunity to live through the 4 Alien movies, whether you like some of them or not. But what I'm going to try to do with this video is show you the first official scenario, which is Alien, the first movie. You can mix and match locations and objectives as you see fit. You can even incorporate decks from Legendary Marvel, and they provide instructions in the rule book for how to sort of translate certain rules across. What I'm going to do though is just kind of set this up and kind of a threefold first step here, set up the game, a bit of a tutorial, and I'd like to also show my storage solution for this game. So the game comes with a rule book, pretty simple rule book, not a whole lot to it, a little bit of glare there, but fairly straightforward rule book. Rules overall are fairly straightforward. My box, which was originally actually a collection of this foam material here, and cards and separators like these. So the cards themselves, I have them all sleeved using Ultra Pro standard sleeves, and as you can see I use Ultra Pro deck boxes to hold them. But the cards themselves, it's pretty decent paper stock, but I still don't like riffle shuffling these. I'm just not a big fan of that. They can wear out pretty fast, I think, even though this is pretty decent card stock. Let's put that back in here. So like I said, I'm going to try the first scenario, which is officially the Alien movie. So we're sort of going to relive the Alien movie. To do that, we're going to need a few different sets of decks. We have in here, these are what are called the Hive decks. There's one Hive deck for each movie. There's really a Hive deck for each objective. So actually you can combine objectives from different movies. It might kill the theme somewhat depending on how the objectives proceed from one to the next. But so I have this Hive deck, this collection of Hive decks here for the first 2 movies. And what I'm going to do is take the Hive deck for the first movie, and we'll put the second movie away here. And we'll put that back in my box. Then I have another box here that's labeled Alien Characters. So there are 4 characters per movie for a total of 16 different characters. These character decks are basically your primary means of doing battle and recruiting additional characters and things of that nature. So we're going to need all of the cards from this deck, and there are quite a few of them, as you can see. For each character there are 14 cards, so there are 56 cards in this deck here. And we're going to put this completely away. I'm going to go ahead and set the Hive deck over here. We're going to set the character deck over here in what's called the barracks, and I'll talk about this stuff later. We need to choose players and starting cards. So this is a deck building game. If you're familiar with Dominion, for example, Dominion, you tend to start with a certain amount of money and a certain amount of estate value. Here you're going to start with a certain number of really basic attack cards and a certain number of really basic recruitment cards. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this out of the way here. And take a seat. There's a certain set of characters. You have 10, I believe, to choose from. And we'll just kind of talk about each one of them here. And then we'll talk about how you build your starting deck. So if we kind of go through these cards here, without getting too much into explaining the rules, we're just going to kind of talk about each of these. We have the Scout here. Let's hold him up. Still having a little trouble orienting properly. I'm trying to avoid glare as well. So here's the Scout. He has 10 health, as you can see in the lower right corner there. The 5 that's above that, that's his armor value, his defensive value. And that doesn't come into play, especially if you're playing solo. It comes into play when you introduce some of the additional rules that are in the game, where you can have perhaps a traitor or a player becomes an alien, and then that person's goal is then to kill the other players. But playing solo, solitaire, you're not going to do that. Each of these player cards, their avatars, they tell you that there is a particular card specific to that character, and that's the role card, and it's specific to each of these characters. And it tells you what it is that you need to put in your deck. I just keep them with each other. So the Scout, for example, gets this reconnaissance card. It allows him, when it's played, to draw a card and then scan any room. And right now, you don't know what that means unless you've watched another Legendary Encounters video. We have the Executive. He's a little weaker. We have a Priest, also fairly weak character. We have a Researcher, also fairly weak. We have a Gunner here. Obviously the Gunner, because being the Gunner, he's a little stronger. He has 11 health. We have a Technician here. The Mercenary is, again, kind of like the Gunner there. We have a Medic who, actually with 10 health is not too bad considering he's a Medic. Then we have the Commander. He is, again, I'm sorry, I'm getting used to my camera here. He's pretty solid for his role. And then we have the Synthetic, who is the strongest of them all. He is 12 health. And when we start talking about what it is that he can do, and actually I'm going to pick the Synthetic as one of my 2 characters. So I'm going to play players. I'm going to play 2 players, namely the Synthetic, and I'm going to play the Scout. Some people say do not play without the Medic. I'm going to try the game without the Medic. I've actually beat the game without the Medic, so we're going to put the rest of these away. The player cards anyway, and they're going back into my little yellow box here. To build your starting deck, you have your role card. Then you take this collection of cards here. You have what are known as grunts. So there's a collection of cards here that are called grunts, and then we have a collection of cards here called specialists. There are 2 forms of currency in the game. Attack points and recruitment points. The attack points are what they imply, therefore attacking enemies. They also happen to be for scanning rooms. So if you can see here, there are these 3 red slashes. Those represent attack. It takes 4 attack points to scan this room, and when I talk about scanning later, that'll make more sense. Each one of these 4, 3, 3, 2, 2 to scan each of these rooms. So let's go ahead and build our starting decks. To build each starting deck, you're going to need 5 grunts per player. And then we're going to put the rest of these away. And then you need 7 specialists. And then the remaining grunts and specialists go away. I go back into my little yellow box here, and I'm going to close the box and put it away. these will form the starting decks for each of these players. So we have our scout here. I'm going to put him over here. Actually, I'm going to put him right here. See if I can put him somewhere where he can easily be seen. And then we're going to have his deck down here. And then our avatar for our synthetic, we'll just put him over here. And then we'll keep his draw pile, his draw deck, right over here. So what we're going to do is, let's go ahead and do this now. We'll shuffle these cards. I'm doing a little Hindu shuffle here. I also do this kind of shuffle here, which is where you you pull the cards up a little bit here, try to grab about half the cards if you can, and then kind of turn them this way, and then cut through. This is particularly useful with these sleeves. The open part of the sleeve is at the top, and the closed part is at the bottom, forming kind of a sharp corner, which makes it helpful to actually do this with them, to push in through. And essentially this is the equivalent of a riffle. So you're basically doing a riffle shuffle without actually bending the cards. I've seen plenty of people who will go ahead and do a riffle shuffle with the cards. They'll take them like this, and they'll either go this way, or they might go this way with the corner. I'm not particularly good at the riffle shuffle when it comes to cards like these. I'm pretty good at it when it comes to, like, poker decks, but not these sleeved cards. And then for the avatar for the synthetic over here, I keep referring to him as an avatar. They're all avatars. So the synthetic and the scouts are avatars. That one particular special card for each of them, that's their roll card. So we're going to do the same kind of riffle shuffling here, the equivalent of riffle shuffling anyway. And then maybe a little more of the Hindu shuffle here to kind of wrap this up. Put this over here. Then each player to start out will draw 6 cards. This becomes your draw pile for the game. So then here's the hand that I've drawn for the scout, and we'll go through this here in a second. I'm going to put the hand actually on top of the draw pile here. And then we'll do the same thing for the avatar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, he's got his collection of cards that he has. And interestingly enough, I have drawn the roll card for both of them on the first draw. That's usually not the case. Slightly worse than 50-50 chance. There are 13 total cards, and one of them is the roll card, and you draw 6. So there's a little less than 50-50 chance that you're going to grab that card. So what we need to do is prepare the rest of the board here, the rest of our mat, our play area. I've already laid out our hive cards and our barracks cards, and these are the characters. There's 4 characters like I was talking about. Let's go ahead and look at these really quick. So for the movie Alien, we have Captain Dallas here, Mr. Tom Skerritt. We have the navigator Lambert, played by Veronica Cartwright. I really like the art on the cards. What they did, rather than using still shots from the movies, they actually did character art, kind of a bit of a comic book look to them. And then we have Parker here, played by the late great Yaphet Kotto. He died before his time, sad to say. And last but not least, our favorite, the great heroine Ellen Ripley, and her set of cards. So for each of the movies, for each of the character sets that come with each of the movies, there is a Ripley card. There is a Ripley deck within each one. And oddly enough, if you wanted to play the game this way, you could take the Ripley decks from all 4 movies and put them all into your barracks, and those are your 4 character decks. You can only have 4 character decks in your barracks to start the game. Again, for thematic reasons, we're going to pick the 4 characters as they were in the first movie. So this is Ripley as she was in the first movie. And what we're going to do is we're going to take these 4 decks, and we're going to make one big deck out of them. So there's 56 cards in here. One thing I should talk about actually is that the card breakdown in here, let's just kind of look at Ripley. The number in the lower right corner is the cost for purchasing the card, for recruiting this card. And you're going to recruit this card out of this area called the HQ. The cost of recruiting the card is really meant to be an indicator of how powerful the card is. Whether it's pretty well balanced or not is up for debate. But you'll see that there are different sets of cards here for Ripley. So she has a card that's worth only 2. She has a card that's worth 3. She has a card that's worth 6. And then she also has a card that's worth 8 over here. And you'll notice when I get all these out, lo and behold, there's only one 8 card. This is the what you might call the rare or legendary card here. The common cards are the 2 and the 3 cost cards. You'll notice that 3 is slightly less common than 2, and then of course 6 is rarer even still. So there were what, 5 here? So 5, 4, 3, and 1 for a total of 14 cards. Whenever you see the unique, the rare, unique, yet legendary, whatever you want to call it, card for a character pop out into the HQ, you want to make an effort to get a hold of that card, to recruit that card if you can, if at all possible. So again, with a bigger deck here, it's a little easier to see kind of what I'm doing here. I'm really pushing hard, pushing these cards in like this, and as you can see, it looks a lot like a riffle shuffle. Let's do a little bit of a kind of a thick Hindu here. Kind of break these apart a little bit, and then do it again. I can do it fairly cleanly. Just kind of push, and then they'll expand out because the deck is this thickness once you push them together. And you need to do this a few times. They say for true randomization on perfect riffle shuffles, you should do it 6 or 7 times, I believe. We're not going to get too crazy here with it. I'm mixing in a little bit of Hindu shuffling. They talk about how to perfectly randomize cards, and they tend to group them into categories. Hindu shuffle, pile shuffle, riffle shuffle, and they never really talk about the idea of doing a combination of them. So sure, you can randomize the cards if you do perfect riffle shuffles 7 times in a row, but you can do riffle shuffle, a couple riffle shuffles combined with a Hindu shuffle, another riffle shuffle, maybe some cutting, maybe a little pile shuffling in there as well. You can mix and match and actually get, a really decent randomization of the cards without really having to go through 7 of these riffle shuffles. So I think I'm pretty much done here. We're going to do a little bit more Hindu here, and then I'm going to cut. And we're going to put this deck over here on top of barracks, like so. The cards over here, the hive, these are actually broken into objectives like I was talking about before. I said there were 4 hive decks for the 4 movies, but really you're talking about 12 hive decks for the 12 objectives. So the way I can tell the breakdown by objective is in the bottom of the card, and this is really, really small type, so it's going to be really, really hard to show. But if you look really closely, you can see at the bottom here, it says the SOS-1. That's objective number 1 called the SOS, and this is for the alien scenario. I believe you should not, the idea is not to take, say, all, 3 objective 1s and make that your hive deck if you're going to mix and match. You really should take an objective 1 from one movie, an objective 2 from another movie of your choice, and an objective 3 from another movie of your choice. And that makes the most sense. So now I'm going to go through and split these up. And the reason I'm splitting this up, I will explain in a moment. The idea is that you're proceeding through a story. This is what provides the theme of the game. So the way these hive decks break down is that Objective 1 has 9 cards, Objective 2 has 11 cards, and Objective 3 has 13 cards. So there's more, Objective 1 goes a little faster than Objective 2, and so on, for a total of 33 cards. Now, in addition to the cards that are here, we're going to add some cards. Now, the cards that we add are based on the number of players. And in this, it's basically 1 card per player per objective deck. So, since we have 2 players, we're going to add 2 additional cards to each of these decks. Well, where do these cards come from? Well, I have another deck box here. I have it labeled drones, alien players, agendas. And agendas and alien players go along with what I was talking about before, with the agenda being potentially a traitor type mechanic and the alien player being a situation where a player has died due to being impregnated by a facehugger and a chestburster, producing an alien, which kills the player, and then the player can choose to become an alien character. And there are 4 alien avatars to choose from. The drones are the cards we're interested in here in this situation. So I've got all the drones at the top here, and I believe there are 20 of them, which would make sense for a 5-player game. There would be 5 per objective for 15 plus 5 extra there. We're going to put the rest of these away, put this deck back in the box. The drone deck is where we're going to randomly choose 2 cards for each of our objective hive decks. And they have a lot of different types of cards in here. There are some here that, upon death might give you a bonus. There are some additional event cards when we talk about events. I'll explain those. There is a facehugger in here. You do not want to get a facehugger. It's very bad to get a facehugger. I believe there is only 1 facehugger in here, but it is possible to draw it. Not particularly hard. For more players, it's easier. We're only going to be drawing 6 cards out of here, so not too bad. So we're going to need to shuffle this deck, just like before. I'm not going to go to too much trouble to shuffle it, because it was already kind of messed up anyway, and it's not like I memorized the order of these cards. Like I said, I believe there's about 20 of them in here. So we're going to do a little bit of riffle shuffling and a little Hindu here, and maybe a quick cut. Then we're going to take and draw 2 cards for each of these for a total of 6. The remaining cards go away. I am going to set them aside face down. We do not want to see the contents of the remaining drone cards, because that will assist us in determining, or at least give us an idea of what we're limited to here. For example, if I saw the facehugger in the remaining drone deck, I know we don't have to worry about an additional facehugger. Then we take each of these objective decks, and let's start with the third one, because that's going to be at the bottom. So we're going to take this third deck here. We're going to take the 2 drone cards without looking at them. We'll shove them into the deck here, and then we're going to shuffle this deck. I'm not going to get too crazy with shuffling the deck. And we're going to do the same for the other 2 objective decks here. So this is the third objective deck. It goes at the bottom of the hive over here. Then we do the same thing for our second objective. We take the 2 drone cards that we drew, and we stick them in here face down somewhere, and we do basically the same thing. The riffle becomes a little bit more complicated, a little bit more challenging when you get down to these little bits of cards. There's 11 plus 2 in here, so there's 13 cards I'm trying to riffle in here. It's a little tough, but probably still a little better than doing too many Hindu shuffles there. I almost peeked at a card. Don't want that to happen. Want to play fair. Then we put that on top. Same thing here. Take the objective 1 cards. These are kind of pretty well arranged already. Take our 2 drone cards and kind of shove them in here. And then do the same thing. Let's shuffle this thing up a little bit. Amazing, I'm trying to do a little bit of a riffle shuffle here with only 11 cards. Cut and put it at the top. So now we have this big deck, this hive deck here. I'm going to just kind of square the edges. I'm a little OCD when it comes to this stuff, so I want to kind of keep things at square edges, square corners if I can. Our barracks has been shuffled. Our hive has been shuffled. What are we missing? Well, there's a few more decks we need to deal with here. I have another deck box right here. This deck box includes locations, objectives, sergeants, the hatchery, and strikes. And we're going to need all the sergeants, everything in the hatchery, and all the strikes. But we're only going to pick one location and 3 objectives. And like I said, we're going to play through the first Alien movie. So we're going to pick the location of the Nostromo, and we're going to pick the 3 objectives for the Alien movie. And here is the, wow, again, I'm trying to get used to this. This is the character card, or I'm sorry, the location card for the Nostromo, the commercial towing vehicle Nostromo. You'll notice there are some hazards here. I'll talk about what those hazards are. Hazards are bad, and it goes right here in this location section. For the other 3 movies, there are other locations. So we have Hadley's Hope, which is the colony, the shake and bake colony that they attempted in the movie Aliens. We have Fury 161, which is the prison planet, the all-male prison planet in which Ripley had crashed in Alien 3. And then we have the Auriga, which is the ship where the experimentation was going on and the attempt to clone Ripley, which was successful to a degree. A little bit of trivia. In the movie Alien Resurrection, the screenplay was written by Joss Whedon. I don't hold it against him. He didn't have control over the rest of it. All he did was submit a screenplay. I'm sure he wasn't available on set for any rewrites or anything of that nature. Joss, for a long time, was known as a script doctor, where he would take existing scripts and punch them up a little bit, make them better. He did it for movies like Speed. He was one of the screenwriters on Toy Story. Got an Oscar nomination for that. Now, the objectives. So we have 3 objectives. Every time you play, you're going to have 3 objectives you have to complete. So there's the first objective is called the SOS, and the objective is to find both parts of the SOS. Now, they don't go into any detail, so it's kind of meant to be a surprise. What does that mean? How do we do it? You'll find out when you get there. It will eventually tell you what to do. Each of these objective cards also comes with an event. While this objective is in play, any event card you hit has this effect. And then we have the second objective, which is no one will hear you scream. The objective is to block the ventilation shafts. Again, how do you block the ventilation shafts? Well, you find out when you start moving through the cards. And it has its own event as well. Then we have objective 3, which is the perfect organism. The objective is to kill the perfect organism. Well, what does that entail? Well, you get to find out. And again, it has a special event. And we take these 3 objectives in their order. We place them in the objective designated area of our mat. And speaking of our mat, I didn't really talk too much about it, but it's basically like a giant mouse pad. It's that kind of material. There's the no slip underside to it, and the nice, felt surface. It feels really good. It looks great. I love the artwork. So the other objectives and locations are going to go back into the box because we don't need them again for the rest of this game. Next we have our Sergeant cards. This is Sergeant Apone here. If you remember Apone from Aliens, the movie Aliens, there's a special deck. Each of these Sergeant cards is identical except for icon in the upper left corner, the one just below the USCM icon. So the USCM is the Colonial Marines icon, and then the one below it there. We'll talk about what each of those mean. The sergeants get shuffled as well. There are 10 of them. You kind of have to know this before you put them down. Every sergeant has a recruitment cost of 3. So it takes 3 recruitment points to purchase a sergeant. Sergeants go in the sergeant designated area of the board. Next we have our hatchery. Now the hatchery is just the collection of lovelies like the facehuggers and the chest bursters. Definitely don't want one of these chest bursters. Lovely artwork. I should have mentioned this game is for ages 17 and up, and that's one of the reasons why. A lot of violent imagery. The hatchery sits over here, and the cards are only pulled when they're needed. Then we have this location for strikes, this designated area for strikes. Strikes are cards that hurt you. Whenever you're told to deal a strike to a player, you have to draw a strike. You'll draw it from this deck, and they cause varying amounts of damage. There are some that are the ones you would really love to get, like the close call. These are the next best, the flesh wound. There are some cards here that cause strikes that the number there in the corner, if you can see that there, it's red, it's not white. That means you can't heal this one. And they actually remind you on the card that the strike can't be healed, which is interesting given that the rules explain to you that strike cards with the red number cannot be healed. How do you heal strikes? Well, we'll get to that too as well. Let's just say that the medic is a specialist in healing strikes, and of course I didn't choose the medic, but there are other ways to heal strikes. So I'm doing the same riffle shuffle here with the strike deck, mixing it up here a little bit. Spread those close calls apart a little bit. Try to get the really nasty cards at the bottom. Don't want to pull those nasty cards. There's one that causes 4 damage, but it's a nice card because it's a somebody help card, and that's what it says on the card. It says somebody help ! And it gives the other players an opportunity to save you, and they need to have a card with a particular icon on it in order to successfully save you. I'm going to Hindu shuffle the rest of these cards a little bit here. As you can see, the setup takes a little while. There's quite a lot of cards to get out and put on the board and shuffle and prepare. So put the strikes right there. So eventually you can get used to it, and it becomes just secondhand and really easy to get this game set up, especially if you're by yourself and you're not having to explain to other people how to play the game. So this deck is done. That is the last deck we have to deal with. All of the cards that we need to play the game are now in place. So I think I'm going to stop right here, and we'll get into sort of a tutorial and how the game starts in the next video.